Well, it has no doubt been not only the dominant theme on my show the last several weeks, maybe months, but I am just getting bombarded every day with comments from parents about the failure to reopen schools, the fact that remote learning has been an abject failure for so many of our kids, and the toll that it's taking. Parents have had it. A lot of kids have had it. A lot of great teachers have had it. I know a lot of teachers who are energized and love being with their kids in person, but maybe it's their union that's not allowing them in. Let's get an overview on where we are with the Superintendent of Public Instruction in our state, Chris Reykdal, who joins us here on the Dori Monson Show. Chris, always good to talk with you.
Thanks for having me on, Dori. Good to talk to you.
All right. So how in the world, when we have all these studies, all these data about schools that have safely reopened, not only in our state, private schools have been open most of the year, around the country, around the world, schools have reopened. Why are we still in this situation in Washington?
Well, we sure talked a lot about this, you and I. We certainly live in a state that takes local control to a very extreme measure. I think generally we really like that, but in moments of crisis, people wonder why we don't make more centralized decisions in the state. And it's not in our laws. It's clearly a local school board decision. The good news is we've got now a third of our elementary kids back in school, a couple days a week at least, in dozens of districts who are fully open. So we've made a ton of progress in the last 4 to 6 weeks. But for some communities, they've made a very different decision.
Well, it's not just the communities and school districts that are making decisions. There is the state making decisions. I talked to the principal at Odessa High School over in Lincoln County on my show yesterday. She's also a mom of a couple of high schoolers, but she sees the toll this is taking, and she cannot believe that the Puget Sound corridor is being allowed. Kids are back doing sports this week in the Puget Sound corridor, even though we have a much higher COVID rate than counties in eastern Washington. So why are schools like hers not allowed to open when ones with higher COVID rates here are?
Well, every school is allowed to open, and we've encouraged all of them to open. We've put very clear health framework in place, and districts across the state are meeting it. Hand hygiene, cleaning, screening every day, face coverings, and physical distancing, and districts everywhere have the open. Every district could open tomorrow if that was their choice. Now,
you are correct. Yeah, that's a great point, Chris. Let me rephrase the question. Is for extracurriculars, why are schools here in the Puget Sound area able to restart those this week when schools in Lincoln County cannot? What is the sense of that?
Yeah, I don't know. Unfortunately, as you and I have also talked about, the whole athletics, extracurricular stuff that happens outside of schools is under a nonprofit organization that we're not a part of. I have encouraged, however.
But it's the governor who's making the call, and you're talking to the governor almost every day.
Not about opening counties, not about county phases, not about athletics, but I've been very clear. I think every kid in every district should have an opportunity to be back to athletics and sports outside of the classrooms, every one of them.
Okay. One of the big obstacles, in my view, and I know you're going to want to answer with it's district by district, but I would like your thoughts as the superintendent of the state on what teachers' unions across the state have been doing. In Bellevue, they say that they may die if they go back to school, that they're putting their families' lives on the line. I know that you've been looking at the data. Is there anything that supports that teachers will die if they go back in the classroom from all the data that you have seen?
From every bit of data I have seen, the states who follow the safety protocols that we have put in place are extremely safe, not perfectly safe. There's always risk, and there's risk every year with viruses. But they're very safe if they follow the protocols. What we've seen in some states is they don't use our standards. They're not adhering to physical distancing. Some states don't mandate face coverings in the classroom. And unfortunately, we've seen teachers die in those states.
Yeah,
so I think what I'm hearing from folks in this state is we understand what you say is the protocol, and they don't have total confidence that school districts will follow those protocols. That's why there's still conflict locally.
Well, what I have heard is, and I know that there are a couple news stories that have supported this. The teachers in some other states have gotten lazy in the break room when they're with other adults because there's just no kid-to-teacher transmission. American Academy of Pediatrics study 2 weeks ago, 100,000 kids and staffers, not one case of kid-to-adult transmission. So yeah, the teachers would have to follow the protocols, certainly, and I would if I was in their situation. But let's get back to, so when the unions are saying this, saying that they may die, here's my perspective on it. I believe that there are many great teachers, as I said at the beginning, who are energized and love their kids and love teaching. They want to be back in the classroom. I think the teachers union wants maximum pay for minimal work, and we taxpayers aren't getting what we paid for because kids are failing at record rates. Kids are riddled with anxiety and depression. What do you say to the teacher unions that are being a roadblock, whether it's district to districts throughout the state, to doing what's right?
Well, we show them the data, right? We're showing every side of the issue, the data, and we've got 130-some school districts who have opened for in-person learning for at least a couple of days a week across the state with great success. So the data speaks for itself. The protocols are very successful when we follow them. Again, it's not perfectly without risk, but it is mitigating the risk to the point that it is consistent with what we would see in any seasonal virus. And so our message to them is open. It is safe to open, follow the protocols, and then the vaccine becomes really a backstop. It shouldn't be the thing everyone requires at this point in order to open, because that's not what the CDC suggests, and it's not what the data points to.
For the districts that want to reopen, should Governor Inslee force the teachers to go back to work? If their objection is based on just patently false data, should Governor Inslee force them to go back to work?
I don't think the governor or I know whether a district has built a plan that's perfectly safe or remotely safe or closely safe to that standard. That's where that local control comes in. Those are locally elected school boards who are listening to their local community, and labor is certainly a part of that significant conversation. And I just think we should be careful about the state forcing local decision-making here, because it's a precedent that is massive. It is just such a big deal to say the state can come in at any time and step over the control of locally elected school boards.
Okay,
and
real quick. Chris Reykdal is going to stay another segment with me, but real quick before I break, from Pasco to Bellevue, I've heard teacher union presidents say that the desire to get kids back in class is white supremacy. Have you seen anything that would support these unions across the state, from all corners of the state, making an accusation like that?
Well, I get a lot of email traffic, Dori, and for every email I get that says, it is systemically racist to open schools, I get an email that says it's a systemically racist practice to not open schools. So there's a lot of emotion around that. And I don't think there's a lot of data behind the emotion at this point in time. They make the exact same argument whether they want to keep schools closed or they want to open schools. So I'd be careful about that without data or research.
Well, yeah, I think it's outrageous for them to slap the taxpayers in the face like that when all the parents want is what's best for their kids. Chris Reykdal is with us. We'll talk more about the plan to get the teachers vaccinated. He's going to stick around for another segment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can text me at 98973, and we'll continue with the superintendent in just a moment here on the Dori Monson Show. We are back with Superintendent of Public Instruction, Chris Reykdal. And when we first reached out to you a few days ago, it was when you said there was going to be a plan to get teachers vaccinated. That seemed to be kind of a non-story to me. What it says is teachers are not going to move up in line, but when their turn comes, whatever phase we're in, you and the state is going to find a way to give teachers places where they can get vaccinated rather easily. Is that an okay summation of it?
Yeah. I don't get to determine the phases. I certainly requested that the educators go first, or at least the ones in buildings. The governor has made it a little easier, but we're not first in line. We've got to get through about half of the current phase. But what we've observed is even in the current phase, people look around and they say, I'm not sure where to go. So we wanted to have a plan in place when our time comes. Maybe it's 5 or 6 weeks from now. where everyone at least knows if they're in the education system, there is at least one place guaranteed to serve them.
Got it. Okay. Hey, one other thing that has just been a firestorm of controversy this week, Chris, I'm hearing from hundreds of parents, is the Black Lives Matter curriculum that is in districts in much of the state right now, throughout the Puget Sound area and many other districts. And I know you're going to want to go back to local control, but I'd like your thoughts as superintendent. I'm looking at some of the curriculum that a Shoreline parent sent me for their kids' elementary school. And today, in fact, Wednesday, is trans affirming, LGBTQ plus affirming, and collective value. That's fine. Lifting up kids is absolutely fine. But they say that they're required to dismantle cisgender privilege, that their foundational principle is to dismantle the nuclear family. These are really destructive things. When we're telling kids that their privilege should feel guilty if they're cisgender, to want to dismantle the family. There are a lot of parents who can't believe that this is being allowed in the schools when the grades for basic educational values are at all-time lows. What's your thoughts on all of this?
Well, our role here is to establish learning standards, and so we would obviously never support a learning standard that attempts to dismantle nuclear families or any kind of family structure. So I'm not sure the source of that, but I can certainly try to understand better.
Well, that's what you said last time we talked about it. You said you didn't know about that, but it's, the founder of Black Lives Matter, Alicia Garza, and she wrote to students that we need to do the work required to dismantle cisgender privilege, to uplift black trans folk. And in their foundational documents, Chris, they wanted to dismantle the nuclear family and the patriarchal society. I think fathers missing from kids' life, I've talked to you enough. I think you sound like a great dad. I'm confident that I'm a great dad. And when there's a group that wants to dismantle patriarchal society, I think we're talking about some stuff that's really damaging. And, you have veto power. I know you give districts local control, but you told me with the sex ed agenda that you guys review all of this stuff. Why is this allowed?
Well, I think you're confusing a couple things. Number one, you cited a nonprofit organization who doesn't write our curriculum. They don't write our standards. So that's, you can have a problem with that group. And I'm suggesting to you that doesn't mean that that's the standards that is taught in our schools. But
no,
I'm going to leave you to have that.
That's in the schools. I mean, this is stuff that has been approved curriculum in the schools this week.
Right. And what I'm trying to tell you is we have learning standards and districts have to meet that. We don't review their curriculum, and not even through sexual health education. This is what was so confusing for everyone through the whole thing. We establish learning standards and districts have to meet expectations on those standards. We do not review their individual curriculums. They make those choices locally and they adopt them with their local school boards.
And are you telling me, here, I'll read to you, my colleague Jason Rance has a story up about this. The lessons to children are very similar to their foundational views. We are committed to disrupting the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement. Would an equivalent right-wing group be allowed and given access to our kids through our public schools like this?
Well, I would hope that both of them would get reviewed by a local school board. And I'll bet what you just read to me was a nonprofit organization who has a particular political view of the world. I bet it wasn't from an actual school board adopted curriculum.
No, that is from, you are correct. That was in the original platform of Black Lives Matter, which, again, was founded by Marxists. The problem I have, Chris, and you and I have talked about this over the years, is that no equivalency on the right, and I wouldn't want a right-wing equivalency, by the way, in the schools, but because of the political, dramatic political bent of teachers and many administrators, they allow radical left-wing stuff, and the filter is just all screwed up in our state right now, it seems.
Well, as you might imagine, I don't agree with that, but it's not because I disagree with your assertion
What don't you agree with?
Well, I don't agree that you should make an equivalency between groups out there, whether they're on the right or the left, and what their ambitions are and what's actually happening in schools. I think great teachers are trying to teach about equity and a more balanced approach to history, and that is a very good thing. I think you shouldn't presuppose that a nonprofit group with a message like the one you described is particularly landing as curriculum. I just don't see that in our schools right now.
Well, I broke a story last spring about that a parent told me about. It was a first grade classroom in a Shoreline school, a Shoreline elementary school, where the teacher had the kids watch a reading of a book on YouTube that was virulently anti-cop. I mean, it was clearly designed to make kids distrustful and maybe even hateful toward police officers. I contacted the district, their spokesperson. They said that that the teacher was given great latitude and discretion, but they were okay with that. And I don't think we should be teaching kids to hate police officers. I think that has tragic consequences, and that is happening.
I don't disagree with you, but I don't think you and I sitting on your radio program can actually determine what was in the curriculum or the content of those classrooms. We have a lot of opinions about what should or shouldn't be, but these districts push this stuff through their locally elected school boards, and they've got to make that determination locally.
All right. Chris, I always appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming on. I hope we get these kids back in school as quickly as possible, because this has been a lost year for a lot of kids, and it's very sad to watch.
Definitely picking up pace. I'm very happy for that, and I remind everyone we can safely do this without vaccines, but we are also pushing very hard to get the vaccines ready to go when our phase comes.
I got it. All right. Chris, always good talk with you. I appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
Superintendent of Public Instruction, Chris Reykdal, your thoughts. You can text me at 98973. Lots more straight ahead here on the Dori Monson Show.